how to find the total number of outcomes from a certain number of coin flips, right? So how are we going to do this? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down all of the possible outcomes, right? So that means heads and tails, right? Pretty simple to start with, right? Now I'm going to go to my first flip, right? So I know that it could start with a head or a tail, yep. And then what I'm going to do after this, and the way I'm going to do this in the future as well, is after that head or tails, how many different outcomes are there left? So for the first flip, there is only one with head or tail, right? Nothing else happens after that. The second flip, a bit more goes on, right? Head or a tail. After that, right, it could be either one of the first flip outcomes. And there's two in total, right? One where it's heads, one where it's tails, right? Meaning in the total, there are two more outcomes that start with H, right? And therefore, when it starts with tails, there are also two more outcomes. Four in total, right? Moving on to the third flip, right? Heads, tails, right? Now in this case, there's now two flips left after I've made the heads, right? So I've flipped the heads, I've got two left. Now, how many outcomes are there for those two remaining flips? Well, there's four, right? So that means there's four outcomes where it starts with 10, and four outcomes where it starts with tails, right? 8 in total. I'll do the fourth flip as well, right? And this is just to get the idea of the trend that's going on here, right? Heads and tails, right? Same as before, one flip's done, there's now three flips remaining, there are 8 different options, so there's 8 when it's heads, and 8 for when it's tails, meaning there are 16 options in total. Now, what you'll notice with each of these is that every time I add a flip, it's doubling the total number of outcomes. And this is because there's a new heads and a new tails option for what the previous outcome was like, essentially. So you can actually write these as 2 to the power of something. So for example, I could say this is equal to 2 to the power of 1, right? In other words, that's to the power of 1, right? And this is 2 to the power of 2, right? In other words, it's a 2, right? And this is 2 to the power of 3, or 3, and then this is equal to 2 to the power of 4, or 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is equal to the first flip, 2, second flip, 3, third flip, 4, fourth flip, right? And basically, what this means is that I can actually just write a mini formula for this, right? So for a coin flip, right, there are 2 to the power of n, and that is the number of outcomes that there are for a number of coin flips. And this is where n is equal to the number of flips, right? So if n equals the number of flips, that will show you how many outcomes there are, right? So it's only going to increase very, very fast. So for example, if I made like 8 flips, right? I could instantly do this with a calculator. 2 to the 8th, right? We go 2 to the 8th. That means there would be 256 outcomes, right? And that's just going to increase even more. 2 to the 9th, that'll be 256 multiplied by 2, or 512, right? So if I undo this, what I can do, whoops, let me do that one. If I undo this, right, I can actually generalize this formula for not just a coin flip, but for any other number of outcomes, essentially. So by generalizing this, I can now go x to the power of n, right? And all I need to add to this is that x equals the number of outcomes on, I guess, like turn 1, right? So the first time you have a probability of doing one or the other thing, it's going to equal that. So a good example of something else into this would be like a 6-sided dice. So that would be 6 to the nth, right? So 6 different options to the nth, meaning that if you roll a dice twice, that's just 6 squared, or 36 different outcomes. So that's why when you're rolling a dice, there are way more outcomes than flipping a coin, quite obviously. One important thing to note about this as well, though, is that this is with repeats, right? This is very important because if you had no repeats, for example, if I was flipping a coin, if I did heads, right, and then I would only be able to do tails next. I wouldn't be able to do heads again. An example of this is one of the balls in a bag questions, where it's like I have 7 balls in a bag, 2 red, 2 blue, and 3 green, right? And then you just take all 7 out. That wouldn't work with this formula. It would have to be different.